were talking about heat safety and some very specific things about it. Making sure you cool down enough at night, making sure you're aware that if you have any other health conditions that you're extra cautious in the heat. So we're talking more about that, and this is always a great Facebook Live for us because in our partnership with UT Physicians, we have a doctor here live and in person. She's answering your questions. We want to hear from you, so ask us anything in the comments. Say, hey, how's it going? Anything you have to ask Dr. Kenya Parks with UT Physicians. We are here and happy to help you out. So Dr. Parks, just to kind of reiterate what we went over in the story in our 4 o'clock show in case our viewers missed it. We're talking about heat safety and just how dangerous it is. Do you think people understand really how dangerous the heat can be?
Sometimes they understand, but a lot of times they forget when they're in the midst of having fun, being out in the beach or the amusement parks.
Yeah.
So it's actually important to re-emphasize it, especially here in Houston, that we have temperatures that are above 95 on average during the summer, so it's actually pretty important.
And people who have other health conditions like diabetes, heart disease, those conditions can get exacerbated by the heat. How does that work?
So they already have conditions that put them at risk. So they have like multiple risk factors. So their body cannot regulate like the average person. So they will be considered like vulnerable populations. And also even elderly individuals that have no pre-existing health conditions would also be. And then on top of that, like children, of course.
Children, yeah, children are a big factor. I was just telling you a story about how, you know, you take the kids to the beach, they go in the water, they don't want to come out, they don't want to reapply sunscreen, they don't want to drink their water and stay hydrated. It's very difficult, but it's so important because they can get overheated quickly.
Important, yes. Yeah. So you have to remind them to drink water. You should have goals for the day of how much water you're drinking, especially if you're out on the beach. And it's your job to protect them because they want to have fun, but you're really looking at the long term, as far as sun damage to the skin and or possible heat stroke or heat-related illnesses.
Let's talk about the symptoms of heat stroke and if there are maybe any differences in how heat stroke presents itself in adults versus children.
So it's about the same, but adults are able to identify a lot of the symptoms, right? And so the heat stroke will be the extreme. And at that time, the body has almost given up in being able to deal with the heat, whereas early on, they may start showing the signs, like a little bit of confusion, irritability, feeling weak, fatigue. So those are very soft signs, so it's important to be keyed into those signs.
And the importance really is to preemptively take care of those things before you hit those symptoms, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing is that some adults may engage in drinking, and they may be out there in the sun having fun, and so that is another risk factor also because you're becoming dehydrated. So all of those things have to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. I was reading a little bit about how folks who are outside for an extended period of time, or maybe who work outside, have jobs, if you are in the postal service or construction, that coming home and cooling down is so key because if you don't cool your down body enough, that can have prolonged effects.
But a lot of the individuals that are out there in the field, they know how to take the breaks, they know to drink throughout the day, so they are very keyed in into all the things that they should be doing. So throughout the day, they're taking care of themselves, and I think that's even more important than later on in the day. Definitely, you're gonna hydrate and relax and everything, but also what's happening throughout the day. Like if you're out there having to work in construction or in different areas like postal delivery or anything else like that. But typically, they know how to take care of their body because they wouldn't survive their profession if it was not the case.
Yeah, they definitely know. Any questions out there, Brandon? Are you looking on our Facebook Live to see?
Yes. Jonathan Thomas is asking, why does it take so long for me to cool down when I come in out of the heat?
Oh yeah. Why does it take so long? You think as soon as you walk into air conditioning, I'm good, but really you're not.
Well, it's a complex system, and your body is going through thermoregulation, so it's not instantaneous. As soon as you walk in, you're not going to be totally cooled off. Your body is slowly adapting to a new environment, so it's not going to be like poof. Everything is okay.
Yeah. Does a cold shower help, or ice packs, stuff like that?
Well, a cool shower will be fine.
Okay.
Definitely, and drinking water and relaxing, definitely.
Yeah, because the heat takes a lot out of you.
It does.
All right, any more questions?
Well, we just got folks in May and speaking in. Let's see. We've got Pamela watching from Pasadena.
Hey, Pamela. All right, so as we wait for more questions to come in, I want to talk to you about prescription medications. Sometimes people keep those with you. They keep them in their car. They keep them in places that get hot. That's a no-no, right?
That is a no-no. A lot of them will have on their label the extremes of temperature that can be tolerated by the medication, because sometimes you change the nature of the medication by it being in extreme heat. So definitely your glove compartment is not the ideal place for most medications.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that definitely has to be taken into consideration.
A huge concern for folks in Texas, because this is a big issue that we see really all over the country, but I think Texas has one of the highest rates, is kids in hot cars.
It's always so sad.
It's devastating, and it happens once is enough. It shouldn't be happening, but it does. Do you have any tips for parents? Because we've seen a lot of cases where really, law enforcement has determined that it was an accident, and it does happen. How do you prevent that?
Most of the time it is an accident, but people sort of misgauge the time that it takes to go to the store and purchase something. They think, well, I'm going to step out for a few seconds.
Yeah.
But actually it's minutes, and the car can get elevated in temperatures above 100 really quickly.
Yeah.
So definitely take the child out of the car.
Yeah.
Take the time to park. It's not worth it buying this little grocery or anything else, like putting your child in danger. And that's probably the biggest take-home message, is that don't even take the chance, because you cannot gauge how long you're going to be inside that store, and it's just not worth it.
It's really not. And cool weather, hot weather, just take your kid inside with
exactly,
you.
because so many things can happen besides heat. There's a lot of crime, so definitely take your child with you.
The other big issue, especially with kids around the water, is drowning, and that's a very scary thing. And we talk a lot on KHOU about free swim lessons and water safety lessons and the importance of that. Do you think parents underestimate their swimming abilities and maybe their kids' swimming abilities as well?
I think one of the major issues is that parents don't know who's watching the child. I think that's a big issue, because you have whole families going out and everyone assumes there's someone that is watching the child.
Yeah.
So the advice that I give to my parents is have someone designated to watch the child, and they should be an arm's length away from the child. And the other thing, swim lessons are so important, and teaching your child how to float as early as possible really is also another great thing to do.
All right, and phones are a huge distraction, and that's what happens with a lot of parents. So important to have a designated person, even if you say, hey, I've got this half-hour shift or an hour shift. That is good to know.
And it's not only the ocean, it's also little swimming pools, the kiddie pools. Make sure you turn them over if you're going away, and refill them when you're there.
Oh, that's smart.
And also covering the pools and everything.
People underestimate the kiddie pools, but kids can drown in the smallest amount of water.
You only need an inch of water.
Wow, yeah, so definitely drain those out before you head inside. Any questions, Brandon? Coming in?
Our very own Red Buckets, and he wants to know what he should do before going out in the heat for breaking news.
Speaking of people who work in extreme. Okay, speaking of people who work in extreme heat and condition, our reporters do that as well. And oftentimes they're running out because there's breaking news, and they don't necessarily have the most time to prepare for the heat. If there's one thing that you would suggest that they do before they head out, what is it?
It's know to take breaks. And also to have plenty of cool water.
Yeah.
I think those are the two major things: is knowing the limitations of your body. And taking breaks to cool off.
Sunscreen is a biggie too.
Yes.
Because a lot of people say, well, I'm in and out of the store today. I'm not really hanging out outside. We think of sunscreen sometimes as I'm going to the pool, I'm going to the beach, I'm hanging out at a barbecue. That's when you think about sunscreen, but really you should be wearing it every day.
Exactly. Even on cloudy days is enough, because the rays come through. So definitely apply sunscreen. And here, you need at least 15 to 30 on average days that you're not spending much time, but it really should be above 30 if you're going to spend like major time in the pool or anything else like that. So sunscreen should be like a component of your sun care and your skin care.
Yeah. Okay, Brett Buffington, we answered your questions. Drink a lot of water, wear a lot of sunscreen, okay? All right. Let me ask you more about symptoms that maybe don't happen immediately.
Right.
Sometimes people feel the next day they're more lethargic, or the heat definitely plays a role for a while. Is there anything concerning if, say, I was out today, but then tomorrow I'm feeling the effects? Is there a reason to be worried there?
So typically it happens within the time period that you were exposed, but you can be suffering from dehydration, but definitely if you're not feeling quite yourself and you're still off the day after, you should actually seek care. Dehydration can happen really quickly, and you feel pretty horrible when your body doesn't have enough water. But if you're still feeling ill effects the next day, that would be like a warning sign, and I would go to your physician and just get checked out.
A lot of people also don't realize that heat affects your sleep. It makes it harder to sleep, right? And if you've had a really hot day outside, you're probably tossing and turning. So is that why it's even more important to kind of cool down so you get a good night's rest?
Right, and typically people will take a cool shower, and that brings up another point that sometimes the ACs go out.
Yes.
And so we think of like heat exhaustion and everything outside, but there's like a lot of individuals that succumb to heat stroke and heat exhaustion, even in their apartment buildings, especially like the elderly, that something may have happened and they don't have anyone to fix it. So that also brings up the importance of checking on individuals in your community that may be a bit vulnerable if the power goes out and it's particularly hot. Those are some things that you may want to think about.
There's an issue with kids and water that I've seen a lot in the last couple of years called dry drowning. Do you know what that is, and can you explain that a little bit more to us?
So that term is sort of like
that's what it's been referred to, but I haven't really heard an official term for it.
Right. Dry drowning, I guess they would mean that the water has not. I'm not so sure where that term comes from.
Yeah. I guess it's a phenomenon for kids who maybe be affected by the water, but it's after it fills their lungs or something like that. Right, So I didn't know if that was is that a concern that you see in your clinic or in your office?
So because it's like a equivocal term, but sometimes the effects of like succumbing to water are not seen right away. And so parents are actually lulled into a sense of security, and then later on the child has ill effects. And I think that's what they mean by like the dry drowning, is the sense that it wasn't immediate, but there is like damage that has occurred, and the child seems normal, but later on they succumb to the injury caused by the drowning. So I guess that's what they would like consider dry drowning, because it's not like it happened like immediately after the child had an accident or anything in the water.
If you could explain the difference between heat exhaustion and then the more severe heat stroke.
So it's a continuity. So the heat exhaustion is when your body is already setting off all the alarms. That's saying you're not doing what you're supposed to do with me, right? And so you'll start feeling the fatigue. You may feel nauseous, irritable, confused. Whereas heat stroke is that you already have done major damage. And that can lead to death. So the key is to recognize the soft signals that are the heat exhaustion, as opposed to waiting for the heat stroke. And act on it and do the cooling methods, make sure you hydrate them if they're still not, if they slip in and out of consciousness, which will be like in the case of heat stroke or extremes of body temperature, you cool them down and you activate the 911 system, the EMS system.
Good to know. in the heat, you're sweating buckets, especially in the humidity here in Houston. But not sweating is also a sign that something is very wrong.
Exactly. And so with the heat exhaustion and heat stroke, sometimes individuals will be sweating profusely, and other individuals will not be sweating at all. And that is also a sign that the thermoregulatory system is not working well, and that is being affected.
Do you think people have been better about heat safety over the years? Do you think we're more aware that, you know, we take heat?
People are more aware, but as human beings, when we're having fun or are distracted, we often forget like some of the important things.
Yeah, maybe set an alarm on your phone for every hour, so you drink some water, you reapply your sunscreen, you get in the shade.
Yeah, it's
not a bad idea. I'm going to remember that at the next pool party. All right. Do we have any other questions?
So Melissa McDonald is asking, how do you know what is best to drink on hot days? There's so many choices in water and sports drinks, etc.
Right.
So
That's a good point. Yeah.
I would stay away from the sports drinks because they're high in sugar.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes, like if you're like a super athlete and you're out there and you're exercising a lot, definitely you're gonna want to replace your electrolytes.
Yeah.
But for the average person that is out there, they don't need like the sport drinks. I would just rely on water.
Okay.
Definitely, if you find that you're showing the signs of extra calories.
Yeah, that's very true. Good point. Yeah, because I was thinking about that. A lot of people say, oh, let me grab some Gatorade or something, but unless you're working out outside, there's no point. So water is best. Any other questions? All right. Anything else before we go that we need to know about heat safety and just, you know, how we deal with the rest of the summer?
No, I think the biggest thing is water and being aware of your body.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Dr. Kenya Parks with UT Physicians, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this Facebook Live. Share it with your friends and family. We'll see you later.